Hi, and welcome to another draft replay with Rigel B. My name is Rigel, and today, as promised at the end of my last video, I will be bringing you something other than Witherbloom. Okay, let's get to it. Okay, looking at this first pack, we have a Blot Out the Sky. This card is an absolute bomb in Limited, and so it's going to be a pretty easy pick here. Other cards that we can look at, this Quintorius is pretty strong in the Lorehold school. And then basically the Land, Field Trip, Honor Troll, these are decent cards. The Pop Quiz is all right. But yeah, nothing to compete with those top two cards, and the first one's way better than the second one. Okay, looking at this second pack, a Rise of Extus is a really strong card and fits well in the Silverquill colors. This first card I took, Blot Out the Sky, is so strong that there's really not a lot that's going to convince me not to be Silverquill. It is possible that if Silverquill's completely cut, maybe I would go into another archetype splashing it, but the only way that really works out well is in Witherbloom splashing white. I guess you could go Lorehold and splash black. It's just harder to splash when you're not in green. Not that green has a lot of colored fixing. A lot of the color fixing isn't in green necessarily. They just have emergent sequence and maybe a couple other things. So looking at this pack, the cards that are the strongest are Professor Zoomancy, Expressive Iteration, and the Pillar Drop Rescuer, as well as the Lash of Malice and Burying Books, etc. So for my colors, the Pillar Drop Rescuer is gonna fit in nicely. Oh, this Enthusiastic Studies is a nice card too. Yeah, but this is pretty easy. Plays well in Silverquill. Just a nice card advantage, evasive threat later. Okay, looking at this pack, there's really not a lot for me. In Silverquill, you can sometimes think about playing an Arcane Tunnel. I think it's a fine time to just pick up a lesson. This is you want to pick up lessons early to enable learn cards. And while you don't necessarily need an equal number of lesson cards as learn cards, you definitely do need some lesson cards to be able to fetch. This Expel is a pretty nice pickup. It's just a quality removal spell, and when I have a card as a late game card as strong as Blot Out the Sky, like I don't mind being a bit more of a control-y build. A lot of times your Silverquill decks won't necessarily want to expel quite as much, as your Silverquill decks are best when they're built low to the ground, aggressive with evasive threats. And so in those type of matchups, you'd rather have removal that can remove a blocker or something like that. So here I have a choice between the Spiteful Squad and the Study Break. I think the Spiteful Squad's pretty nice. There's certain matchups where it really excels, but also just the ability when it dies to put those +1/+1 counters. A lot of times in Silverquill, you'll have an evasive threat. You can put those +1/+1 counters on. So it being able to brick wall any big creatures on the ground is pretty nice. Here, there's another Pillar Drop Rescuer, as well as this Clever Luminancer. And this Make Your Mark gets a fine trick as well. But I don't really want the Clever Luminancer in this type of deck necessarily. I'm not necessarily going to shape up to be a low to the ground aggressive deck. I don't think it's a particularly great card. But the Pillar Drop Rescuer, it's a strong card. This pack doesn't really have anything for me. I'm going to take this the spirit, the Stone Hall Spirit, just because it is a 2-drop. I have 2 Pillar Drop Rescuers already, so I need to have some low drops that I can get back from it. And then with the Spiteful Squad, it's nice to have an evasive thing to be able to dump your counters onto. Here I'll take the Leech Fanatic. I think it's going to play better in my deck. Just the lifelink can maybe help me get to the late game. I'm really hoping that I can make the best of this Blot Out the Sky. This pack doesn't really have anything for me. I'll take a Cram Session. It's possible that I'll end up playing this if I'm in a pinch. And now I'll take Make Your Mark. The Make Your Mark, it's gonna play best in a more aggressive build, but we'll take it and see where this goes. Same with Arcane Tunnel. Okay, nothing for us here. This late study break's nice. Obviously, the study break does play better in the more aggressive Silverquill builds, which so far we're not shaping up to be. But it could still make the cut. We'll see. If I get some quality lesson cards, then I'll make it more likely. And last pick. Okay, looking at this next pack, we have a choice between the Spectral Defense, the Mage Horror, and the Rise of Exodus. I think it's pretty clear. This Ifrit Flame Painter is a really strong card in red, but obviously we're not in red, so I think it's pretty easy. Rise of Exodus. Yeah, it's just a quality removal spell, gets you card advantage. And like I said, our deck's not shaping up to be one of the more aggressive Silverquill decks. In that first pack, Silverquill did not look very open, but we're not building our deck the way that Silverquill's typically built. And so we should be able to still get enough playables. And our first pick of Blot Out the Sky was so strong that we're just going to force it here. So we get a quality removal there and Mage Hunter's Onslaught, and it looks like maybe we get another one. I guess this Selfless Glyph Weaver is definitely a consideration. The back half of that, the 8 mana half, is pretty incredible. But it is 8 mana, and the front half of it isn't too incredible. I think I'll just take a quality removal spell in this Mage Hunter's Onslaught instead. So looking at this pack, there's not a lot of options for us. We're just gonna take the Spiteful Squad. You could consider the Golem. Sometimes you have some nice things to target the Golem with in these builds. Like if you get a Guiding Voice or two, this Make Your Mark is a fine trick to use with the Golem. But I think the Spiteful Squad's gonna play out better. Now we have another choice between a 2-drop, the Arrogant Poet, or another Pillar Drop Rescuer. And while I do need some early drops, the Lesson's also a nice one to have in your toolbox as well. It's nice to be able to fetch a removal spell. Even if it's a bad removal spell, it's still nice to be able to fetch a removal spell from your Lessons. But I think I'm just going to take this Pillar Drop Rescuer. Even though we do need some early drops, I really like the card advantage of the Pillar Drop Rescuer, being able to get back my low drops. It'd be nice to pick up this Spirit Summoning Lesson, but we have a really quality removal spell in this Closing Statement. So far, we're picking up quite a bit of removal. We're gonna it definitely looks like we're gonna be sort of a control-y build of Silverquill, which is not very common at all. You won't see this happen too frequently, mainly because Black-White doesn't necessarily have much in the way of card advantage, and so you don't necessarily want to be playing for the late game against decks that do have card advantage, like Quandrix that has like Snow Day and Eureka Moment, etc. Izzet, which has a lot of big spells that are like Creative Outbursts, and various other card advantage. I mean, Snow Day fits there as well. But we have such a powerful card in Blot Out the Sky that we don't mind getting to the late game. And we do actually have some card advantage from these Rise of Extus. So while there's not a lot of card advantage in these colors, the Rise of Extus is a nice source of card advantage. I think I'm just going to go with the Stonerise Spirit. It's not great in this deck, but I do need, or maybe I'll go with this 3-drop instead. I do need I do need things that are 3 drops or less to work with my Pillar Drop Rescuer. I don't necessarily have a ton of things to put counters on this Dusk Mage, Promising Dusk Mage, but I do have a couple things. And maybe if this Humiliate, I could take the Humiliate, or I could take the Introduction to Prophecy as a lesson. I'm not sure exactly which one should be the pick here. I have a few learn cards already. The 2 Rise of Extus and the Study Break could make it. Krampus Session could make it. I think I'll start with the Humiliate, having just taken that Dusk Mage. Now I'll just take a Commons because there's nothing there for me. So now I have a choice between this Scryland that'll fix my mana and this Witherbloom Pledge Mage. I do think this Witherbloom Pledge Mage is a pretty strong card. 5-drop 5/5 is just a big beefy beater that gets in the way of everything, and the life gain off of it is it's a really nice bonus to have. And I do have a deck shaping up that's pretty heavy on spells. There's nothing here that I actually want to play. I'll just take the 1-drop, as if I'm super short on things to get back with the Pillar Drop Rescuer, maybe it'll have to make the cut. Alright, none of this is going to make my main deck. There are decks that you can build in Silverquill that would want to play like a copy of Exhilarating Elocution, but this is certainly not one of them. So this is a interesting pick. I think I could choose between Pest Summoning, which would be a nice lesson to be able to fetch out of the sideboard. This Wandering Archaic, which I think is a pretty strong card. Another Witherbloom Pledge Mage, and another Spiteful Squad. So those are the options I'm looking at. I guess you could also consider Campus Guide, but I'd hate to first pick Campus Guide. I'm going to try out this Archaic. I don't have too much playing experience with it. And like I've said in previous drafts, I want to test out the rares early in the format, because you won't get as many opportunities to test them out. So I actually, it looks like I make a last minute change of I guess I'm just too heavy on 5-drops right now. I needed to smooth out my curve a little bit. And the Pest Summoning is going to be able to help me get to that late game. Here I have a Shadrick's Silverquill. This is a really strong card. So the 2/5 Flying Double Strike, that's pretty nice on its own. Your ability to choose these modes, it's pretty interesting. Figuring out when to choose and which modes to choose. Yeah, and we'll see how that one plays out. Oh, the Sparring Regiment is another super strong card. Just really, really powerful. 3 mana learn, and then every time you attack, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it and untap enchantment. This card can just take over a game all on its own. So I'm really liking how this is shaping up. I would like to pick up an Inkling Summoning or two. But I now have several super powerful cards in Silverquill. And the Silverquill Silencer, it's not, you know, that strong a card, but it's a very quality 2-drop. 2-drop 3/2 that can have some relevancy. A lot of times you're just gonna have to choose in the dark what card you want to name, but other times they'll have just learned and have a lesson in hand, and you can just put that down naming the lesson that they've gotten in hand. So this set does have a bit more revealed information than other sets, which makes this Silverquill Silencer have a little bit of a bonus. So here, not a lot for us. I think we're going to take another 2-drop. I'm short on low drops, and I have all these Pillar Drop Rescuers that I want to Otherwise, that flyer is a decent flyer in Orzhov, but I'm super heavy on 5s and I need some low drops. I'm not sure what to think of this Divine Gambit. I haven't tested it out yet. It could be that the Divine Gambit is a playable removal spell, but I'll just take a lesson here. Get another lesson for my toolbox. And now another option. There's a situational removal spell in Defend the Campus. There's a Hunt for Specimen, and there's a Witherbloom Pudge Mage, and another Stonerise Spirit. I think I'm just going to take the Learn spell here. I now have a decent number of quality lessons to go fetch, and so this 2-drop Learn spell is going to fit in nicely. Now it's between Leech Fanatic and Defend the Campus again. I do think that Defend the Campus is a very reasonable card in these decks, but I'm just going to take the 2-drops again. I have all these Pillar Drop Rescuers, and with these Spiteful squads I'm picking up too, the Leech Fanatic could be a nice host for some +1/+1 counters. The life gain could help me get to my late game bombs. So we'll take this Spiteful squad. And now between these two drops, I think the Leech Fanatic is definitely the one for us. The Plum for the Forbidden, that's much more of a Witherbloom card. Here we get to pick up an Inkling Summoning. That's a nice addition to our lesson toolbox. And then a late Expel. So we just have all of the removal to choose from. It's pretty nice. I'm going to have to make some cuts here. Definitely cutting this 1-drop. I picked up enough 2 and 3 drops that I don't need it. And it's definitely not the type of card I want in my deck. We'll have to make several more cuts once we finish up this. The Make Your Mark, I think I'm going to get rid of that. It's just not really what we need in this deck. This Humiliate, I could see it going. With the way that my deck is built, I'm designed to make it to the late game. I have tons of removal, and I'm designed to try and prolong this game. And I'm getting card advantage out of Rise of Exodus and Pillar Drop Rescuer. I think this Humiliate doesn't necessarily play into the game plan very well, because it's situational. In the late game, when you top deck it, the opponent's not always going to have cards in hand, and so the fact that my deck is designed to go to late game, I don't want a card that I could top deck late and be pretty sad with drawing it. So now we're gonna have to find one more cut here. Options I could think of. These 5 drops are pretty heavily stacked. I could see losing a 5-drop. I could potentially cut a lower drop, but I'm not really seeing what I would want to cut. It's possible that I don't need this Witherbloom Pledge Mage. It is a big fatty that can gain some life, but it is a 5-drop. And I already have 3 Spiteful squads that can sort of gum up the ground, which is part of what the Witherbloom Pledge Mage would do. I'm not very aggressive, so it's not like it's necessarily a 5/5 attacker. It may be more of a 5/5 defender in my deck. And with all the Spiteful squads, maybe I don't need that. I don't really need to pressure them with a big beater like that when I have so much quality late game to work with. So yeah, I think that's how deck building is going to go. Let's get to the games. Okay, we're here for round 1 with our pretty atypical Silverquill deck. Our opening hand looks pretty good. We've got a slew of 2-drops here and a quality removal spell. That should be able to get us a little ways into the game. While I say that our deck is a pretty atypical Silverquill deck, I do think it's a really, really strong deck, exceptionally powerful. We have 3 different cards that could pretty much win the game on their own almost. And then we have a ton of removal cards, and then we have some card advantage in the Pillar Drop Rescuers and the Rise of Ecstasies. how would you pluralize that? Rise of Ecstasy, Rise of Ecstasies. Maybe it's Rise of Ecstasies. I think that must be it, right? Okay, so we trade Leech Fanatics. I went ahead and blocked there just because I have 3 Pillar Drop Rescuers in my deck, so I don't mind trading off 2 drops. And there was no guarantee that I was going to be able to attack back with my Leech Fanatics, so I think it's worthwhile to just go ahead and trade them. They're managing some pretty anemic creatures, not too impressive, and they're already down to 2 cards while deploying some not impressive creatures. So they're down to 2 cards, and I have 2 quality removal cards in hand, so even if they are both, you know, bomb creatures or something like that, I'm feeling pretty good with my position here. Even though I don't necessarily have overwhelming board advantage here where I can start attacking, the fact that we're stable, I have 2 clean answers for if they ever get any big threats, means that this is a game that should last a while, and that's exactly what's going to favor my deck. I have so many powerful cards in my deck that just taking it to the late game is gonna favor me pretty significantly, and this game is shaping up to go long. Okay, Guiding Voice. This is a pretty good learn spell for Silverquill. They get to throw it on the Star Pupil and fetch an introduction to Prophecy. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep on developing. Maybe at some point we'll see if we can trade off the Star Pupil, and then use a removal spell on whatever it puts the counters on or something, if it seems like it's a threat to us. But for now, no real reason to attack and rush things. Okay, so they go for an introduction to Prophecy. Doesn't look like they're gonna do much this turn then. 2 top. All right, so maybe they'll get something going. They attack with their 3/2 here, and I think it's fine to just keep trading creatures off. Like I said, I want to go to late game. I could also just take the damage and then attack back with all my lifelinkers. That would work just fine too. Okay, this Thunderous Order, this is a fairly strong card in these Silverquill decks. They get to combine it with cards like Silverquill Pledge Mage or Combat Professor to give it various different effects like flying and or lifelink. I decided to go ahead and make an attack here, anticipating that they'll probably trade off their Star Pupil and put the counters somewhere. I'm hoping that they'll put them on the Orator, and then I'll go ahead and use a removal spell there. If they put them on the 1/4, maybe I'd use a removal spell on the 3/5 at that point, but maybe I just wouldn't bother. But luckily for us, they went ahead and put it on their best creature, and we get to just use a removal spell to get rid of it. And now we draw our first Pillar Drop Rescuer, so that's going to provide us some nice card advantage, as well as give us a flyer to start pinging in with. I could have also attacked here with my Leech Fanatic. Sure, they block it with their 1/4, but I gained 2 life. And I would have been just fine, you know, if I had to trade one of my other creatures with the Silverquill Pledge Mage or just take it. But I think this is fine too, leaving it back and just trading with the Pledge Mage. I think it's a little bit weird that they attacked their Pledge Mage into my Leech Fanatic, as that's not a very favorable trade for them. The Pledge Mage is something that in the future can gain abilities and is pretty valuable. Sure, they had a Pillar Drop Rescuer to bring it back, but they already had some quality creatures in the graveyard that they could bring back with the Rescuer, so I don't necessarily see the purpose of them trading off and then having to get back the Pledge Mage. I go ahead and offer a trade here of creatures, and they decide to take it. I wasn't sure that they would go ahead and take it. If they... by take the trade, I mean, not damage. If they hadn't, and they just took the damage instead, then when they attack back, I would just go ahead and use my Expel. But I'm fine. I'm happy with the trade as well. we're just keeping the board civilized here. Just waiting. We'll eventually draw one of our bombs and win the game. So here I decided to go ahead and attack with my lifelinker again. I'm just not really anticipating that I'll need it on defense, so gaining the 2 life is nice. And they go ahead and trade again. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't need it on defense because I had the Spiteful Squad. I'm fine blocking with the Spiteful Squad and putting its counter somewhere. So I didn't think that they were necessarily going to attack unless they could get flying. And so I wouldn't need the Leech Fanatic on defense. As it is, they have another Rescuer. And maybe they'll bring back that Pledge Mage again. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they should keep trading it off when they have other fine targets to get back with the Rescuer. Okay, so now their Orator could gain flying if it attacked, right? Because of the Pillar Drop Rescuer. So I'm not sure exactly why they didn't attack. But we'll go ahead and start pinging in with our 2/2 Death Touch. They don't want to trade because then I could put the +1/+1 counters on my 2/3, and that'd be a good place for it. Okay, so here we have a Hunt for Specimen, and I can decide between Inkling Summoning. I think it's one of the summoning cards: Pest Summoning, Spirit Summoning. Inkling Summoning is going to be the best here, as we can use it to trade off with one of their flyers. As now all 3 of those creatures would have flying as long as the Rescuer's on the board. I'm going to use it to trade off with the Orator here, just because the Rescuer I can expel. It's tapped. The Orators are never going to tap, so I'll just trade it off with the Orator and then use expel to get rid of the Rescuer. Alright, and we draw a 2-drop to go along with it, which is pretty nice. It does mean that we're going to have a decision to make here with their Silverquill Silencer. In the dark, it's always pretty tricky to decide what card you want to choose. So when I'm thinking about what card I want to choose when I'm playing against any given deck, first, I want to think about cards that are common. As common rarity, they're more likely to have more of them. And then, secondly, cards that are commonly played in their archetype. So cards that fall into this category here would be like Silverquill Pledge Mage, Guiding Voice, stuff like that. Also, another idea is to name a lesson card. Like one option I could have here is Inkling Summoning. The advantage to naming a lesson card is that if they have, say, 5 learn spells in their deck, each one of those learn spells is a tutor for that. So it's essentially like they have more copies of that card in their deck, potentially. But the flip side of that is that if they have several more lessons in their sideboard, then they don't have to fetch that card. They could fetch something else. So here I decided to choose the Silverquill Pledge Mage, as I expect that to be a pretty common card to be played in this archetype. I could also have named Inkling Summoning. I think that would have been a fine choice. So here we draw another Pillar Drop Rescuer. So we're just really starting to develop our board nicely with all this recursion. And we still have these quality removal spells in hand. We don't have our 6th land yet, but we will eventually. They haven't, however, posed any creatures that we really need to kill, so we've got time. And now we have 2 creatures we can start poking in with, the Spiteful Squad as well as the Flyer. But I'll hold back with the rest of the creatures. They don't seem to want to trade off with my Spiteful Squad because they don't want those counters to go anywhere. So it's making it kind of difficult on them. Here they go for a chump, and they're just going to put the counter somewhere else. They go for the 1/4 to make it a 2/5, make it a better blocker. I get to continue developing my board. Okay, they have a removal spell for my flyer. I'm getting to the position where I could go ahead and start applying, yeah, especially drawing another removal spell. I can start to get aggressive here. I'll just remove their blockers and start getting some attacks in. We could kill them pretty quickly. It doesn't really matter what spell I remove from their graveyard too much. As far as what I'm going to fetch, I think it's between the summonings again, as I already have 2 more removal spells in hand. And I go with the Spirit Summoning as it's going to be something that I can double spell if I draw an untapped land, no matter what. Whereas the Pest Summoning requires 2 black, and I already have a Mage's Onslaught that's 2 black, so I would need an untapped Swamp in order to double spell with those 2. Whereas now, any untapped land, and I can go Mage's Onslaught and Spirit Summoning if I want. So they're done for. and right on cue, we draw our bomb, but they've already conceded, so we pick up the win, and we're 1-0. All right, let's get to the next game. Okay, we're back for round number 2. We managed to pick up the first game. We're 1-0. Looking at our opening hand, looks pretty good. We have a 2-drop, a 4-drop, 2 quality removal spells, and both colors mana, 3 lands. Seems perfect. Pick up another piece of removal. Okay, looks like we're up against Quandrix. Hopefully we'll pick up another land and not miss our land drops. Mathematician. So this is going to work really well against us, unfortunately. It's not really something that I want to trade with. That 2/2, but it sort of halts all of my progress, but it's not really something I want to trade with. And this works out even better because now their fractal's a 2/2 as well. And I have all this removal, but nothing that I really want to use it on. And they're getting 2 creatures with each one of their creatures. So, so far that is in their favor for sure. Their game plan is perfectly counteracting mine. But like I said, they don't really have much going here either, and I have so much removal in hand. A 3rd Biomathematician. That's pretty crazy. So now I expect maybe they could start getting aggressive with some of their 2/2s, especially the Biomathematicians. I guess if I trade off a Spiteful Squad for one of them, then I can grow one of my other creatures to hold back their team if they don't have an answer. And here it looks like they're gonna make the attack. I think I'll go ahead and I'm not gonna use any removal on those. So I think even though Spiteful Squad is really good against these Quandrix decks, as they can provide some pretty large creatures, I have so much removal in hand. I think it's worthwhile for me to trade off one of the squads so that I can grow one of my creatures big enough to hold back their team. If I could just have one creature that holds back their team, I think that's going to work out pretty well for me. It is a little bit tricky deciding where I want to put these counters from the Spiteful Squad. A lot of times I would want to take these counters and put them on the other Spiteful Squad so that when that creature dies, then all 4 of those counters go on the other one. And so I basically get to use those counters extra. But against blue in particular, a lot of the ways they're going to deal with my creatures are bounce spells. And so in that case, it doesn't necessarily matter where I put these +1/+1 counters. They're going to disappear as soon as a creature gets bounced. And if a creature gets bounced, I would prefer it be the cheaper one to cast. So I'm going to put them on the Leech Fanatic. It also just, if I can orchestrate a board where I want to get an attack in, I'll have a lifelinker that's nice and sizable. And so now I take care of their creature who end step with a closing statement, and I'm going to grow the Spiteful Squad. Again, if I put the counter on the Spiteful Squad and the Spiteful Squad dies, that counter is going to move to the other one. I could have put it on the Leech Fanatic just so that I could make an attack without using a removal spell, and then they would have to trade 2 of their creatures for my 1 Leech Fanatic. But I think this is even better, where I'll go ahead and use one of my removal spells and get a lifelinker attack in. This way, I have the 3/3 squad to hold back their team, and I'm going to gain a bit of life. And it's nice having two creatures that are both larger than anything on their team. Okay, so they have a Quandrix command. It is a bounce spell, like we were worried about. And now they do have a 3/3 that can attack again. So we have to decide: do we want to trade this off and grow our Fanatic? I think we'll just take 3 for a little bit. And yeah, now that we draw another Spiteful Squad, I could see just laying the Spiteful Squad and using it to try and trade with their 3/3 and grow my other creatures again. Yeah, this is kind of a great crazy game so far. We're both playing value creatures where the first half of our creature can die and there's another part of the creature left behind. Okay, Needlethorn Drake. That is going to allow them to start attacking in the air, but it's only 1 a turn. I'm not too concerned. I can take 1 a turn for a while I just sit and see if I can draw one of my really impactful spells at some point. Cram Session. Okay, so they're going to fetch, looks like Environmental Sciences, so they must be missing their second blue for something. It'll be interesting to see what they have their second blue for. I could expect maybe Snow Day, which would allow them to get a pretty good attack in. Okay, so now we have the Silverquill Silencer, and we have to figure out what we're gonna name with it. So as far as cards that are at common that I would expect them to play, I could name the Pledge Mage, but they clearly don't have one in hand. I could name Burying Books, as that's a pretty common trick for them to be playing. Or I could name Fractal Summoning. That's something that they usually have a couple of in lessons that they'd like to fetch. I don't know if they would have fetched one if they had one in their sideboard instead of the Environmental Sciences. I don't know how much of a rush they were in to get their second blue. Here you can see that little search function. It's not letting me type in the box, so I'm gonna have to just actually scroll through to what I want. And I think I will name the Fractal Summoning. I can't necessarily think of a better option. Maybe the Burying Books would be a better option. Or yeah. Okay, so they have a Bookworm. I guess they just needed a land and might as well get their second blue, so that's why they went for the Environmental Science. Luckily, I do have this Expel, which is going to be able to answer the Bookworm pretty well. They do have 3 cards in hand that they haven't played. I do expect them to probably be some sort of combat tricks like Burying Books, which is a little unfortunate because it does mean that they have a way to save their Bookworm if they want to, but at least it's a good exchange for me if they have that. They could also have Divide by 0 or something like that. Okay, so they did have the Burying Books. At least they had to use it on their own creature, putting it back. And I draw a Sparring Regimen. This is pretty excellent for me, as now I am going to be able to start creating a board here that's worth attacking with. For instance, I get to fetch. Let's see. I guess I'm going to fetch another one of these exile effects, the reduce to memory, so that I can have an answer for that Bookworm. You really need an exile effect to deal with it long term. And I think I can attack with this bigger squad, as they would have to double block it now in order to kill it. So it'd be able to trade for 2 creatures and put its counters elsewhere. So I think this is a pretty worthwhile attack. And yeah, this is going to play... My whole board is going to play really well with this regimen, as I just get to put these counters on the squads, and then when the squads die, I get to move them to another creature and rinse and repeat. I think as far as where I want to put these counters, I'm running the same problem of if they have bounce spells, how that's going to interact. And I think I will just go ahead and put them right on to the Leech Fanatic and get it ready to attack with. Just being able to have that life. Oh, this works out really poorly for me. So Tempted by Auric, that's an excellent card. They managed to steal my Leech Fanatic. And then they get to attack all in here. It's a little bit tricky now that I don't have my lifelink creature. I can't just take all the damage. I decided to go ahead and, since I have this Mage's Onslaught in hand, I'll be able to deal with their Leech Fanatic. I decided to block with my Spiteful Squad and just start growing this Silverquill Silencer. So we'll get an attack in here, and then we'll play a Leech Fanatic. It's nice to have a Leech Fanatic as maybe that one will be able to gain me some life. And hopefully grow. So they get their Bookworm again, and but I do have the answer ready for it. Unfortunately, they're gonna get a 3/2 at least from the deal. Okay, so they do have a Burying Books, another Burying Books. Maybe I should have, maybe that should have been my name when they had all those cards in hand that they hadn't been casting. I think I'm willing to trade this Leech Fanatic for the Needlethorn Drake. Yeah, and get some life. Yeah, I don't really have any prospects of it getting better than that. I needed to get that out of the way so that my sparring regimen can start growing stuff again. This is a difficult spot though with them. I'm gonna have to kill this Bookworm, and then they're gonna have 2 creatures, and I'm at 8 life. It's definitely a tricky spot. If I can keep drawing creatures though, this regimen is gonna work out pretty well. So now I have to come up with something to name again. And with me, let's see. I think that it might be worthwhile to just name Burying Books as this is my only blocker, and I don't want them to be able to get rid of it and attack me. So I could see naming Burying Books. I could see naming Mage Duel. I could see naming another card that I could expect this deck to have a few of is Serpentine Curve. But I'm more worried about them having removal for my blocker here first. I don't think I can afford to just take it and then attack back in order to grow my creature, as it would still just have to trade for the 3/2 the next turn. So I think it's better to just save the life, stay on 6 here. Unfortunately, they have a Pledge Mage here and to Cultivate. Okay, and Expel, that's going to be able to deal with the Pledge Mage. That's nice. So I'll just take another 2. And maybe I can draw something to stabilize this board. Hopefully they just draw some land in a row or something like that, and I can claw my way back into it maybe. Okay, Leech Fanatic, that's an excellent draw. The Leech Fanatic, if they don't have an answer for it, I'm going to be able to start growing it and gaining life. Eureka Moment, so that's a good draw for them. They get to draw a couple cards for their turn. Definitely going to make it difficult. But if they just play a couple land, maybe that's all they have is land. And I'll be able to start gaining life now and growing my creature. They do have stops here, it looks like. But maybe they just set stops to be deceptive. I don't know. Maybe they have something. Okay, it looks like they have something. Snakeskin Veil. Alright, so that worked out. Pop Quiz, so they get first crack at having some more business now. Hopefully I draw some business. Okay, Introduction to Annihilation. So at some point they could use that to deal with my sparring regimen. Most likely they're just going to save it to deal with a creature, because the regimen doesn't do much if I don't have any creatures. It's nice to draw this Rise of Extus, as that'll give me an answer for the next threat. And then the Pillow Drop Rescuer is also excellent draw, as I get 2 creatures out of the deal. So that's really, really nice draw there. And given that I know the card in hand, I'm thinking about maybe taking this Silverquill Silencer. It's tempting to take the Leech Fanatic, as that can gain me life, and I am down to 7 life. It'd be nice to be able to gain some life, but I think I'll just take the Silverquill Silencer and name that Introduction to Annihilation, so that if they want to cast that, then I'd get to draw 2 cards off it. I think that's gonna work out pretty well for me. It's a little annoying that their search function, it doesn't let me type in the box, but we got there. We found it. Okay, so they don't bother casting it now that I'm gonna draw 2 cards off of it, and it means I'm gonna get to start attacking and growing my creatures. And I draw another creature, which is excellent. It looks like the tides are turning in my favor now. It looked pretty dire for a little while, but I think I'm gonna grow up the Silencer first. I'm not sure about that. Maybe I should grow my Flyer first. I think I just wanted to have something that was a little bit bigger, that if they played something with a 4 toughness, maybe I could have a creature ready to block with or deal with it. Now I'll put the counter on the Dusk Mage, as if that dies, I get to draw a card. They go for an Arcane Subtraction just to gain life and get an Expanded Anatomy, and they draw a Quandrix Cultivator. So maybe they'll use their Expanded Anatomy on it, which would be nice, because I have this Rise of Extus ready to deal with it, and then I can keep the aggression going. Yeah, and that looks like what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and remove this, and it's nice because we'll be able to go fetch another lesson out of our sideboard. There is a card. Okay, we got that. We get to pick up the victory and go 2-0. And we'll see you next round. Okay, we're back for round 3. After a marathon seesaw battle last round, we managed to pull in the victory, so we're sitting at 2-0. Looking at our opening hand, it's another great hand. And our first pick, Blot Out the Sky, our bomb, has decided to show up, so it'll be fun to see how that works out. It's always nice having it, knowing that you're gonna have access to it during the game. It's definitely not something you want to use right out of the gates. It's a bit more of a late game card when you have a bit more mana, but even I could see even playing it as cheap as 5 mana with this hand, if that's just how it plays out. We'll see. Yeah, playing it for 3 2/1 flyers is a lot of times going to be good enough, but if there's nothing rushing me, I'll probably wait to see if I can get 4 or 5 creatures out of it. Just we'll see how the game develops. So far, it looks like they're missing a color. They're stuck on just blue for now. And they go ahead and cast the Serpentine Curve, just feeling like they can't just sit there and do nothing, I guess. And as well as you saw them use the Burying Books on my Leech Fanatic really early on. So here I could just go ahead and run out the Blot the Sky for 3 and put them on a 3-turn clock with them at 18 and me having 6 power of flyers. But having something else to do with my mana, I figure I'll just wait and see. Now, with not having to draw another land and not having anything else I really want to do with my mana, maybe I'll just go ahead and make the 3 flyers and put them on a 3-turn clock in the air. I was taking a chance at being even more greedy, because this is something they could potentially come back from. It's pretty difficult. It would still net me a lot of card advantage, but it is feasible. Whereas if I get 4 or 5, each extra creature makes it less and less feasible that they could come back from it. But But this is going to apply a decent amount of pressure, and they'll have to figure out some way to combat these flyers. Eureka Moment's not a great start for them, as it's not really going to do much for the board here. Okay, I could use a removal spell aggressively here and then get in, but I think it's better for me to just leave up my closing statement at this point and just attack in the air. Yeah, there's no reason to... Oh, and they get really punished here. Decisive Denial. It is an instant. It's a fight spell, but they could have used it while I was tapped out. And so now using it as an instant here, they're going to get blown out by my closing statement. So I have to decide where I want to put the counter here. I think I'll just go with the probably the Leech Fanatic, as I don't really want to put it on one of my flyers. If they use a bounce spell on that, that's where they'd want to use a bounce spell anyways, because it's going to permanently remove a creature. So I think I'll put the counter over on a Leech Fanatic and make it so that that can start attacking as well if they don't have a blocker for it. And I do have a couple pieces of removal in hand, so it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world for them to provide blockers. Okay, so they develop with the Professor of Zoomancy and an Overgrown Arch. This Arch is going to make it so that I don't have a 2-turn clock in the air, as they can gain a life. So so I think I'm going to go ahead. I didn't need to necessarily be this aggressive with my Mage Hunter's Onslaught, but I think it's nice in that now it will be a 2-turn clock again. If they want to make any blocks on my ground creatures, they're going to lose life from the Mage Hunter's Onslaught trigger, which means that my Air Force is going to be lethal next turn again. And they decided to just go for the chump here on the Spiteful Squad to gain a life. I guess they're just trying to buy as much time as possible. Okay, it looks like they're just passing with their mana up. We could definitely expect them to have something maybe like a Snow Day or something. But we're still going to be able to get in with some things. Okay, so yeah, they do have the Snow Day. But they're definitely still feeling the pressure here. I have an evasive creature, and I'll go ahead and attack with my ground creatures as well. If they want to trade off their Fractal for my Spiteful Squad, that'll allow me to put the counters onto the Leech Fanatic, making it so that it can attack through the wall. So then I'll just have to decide if I want to play this Spiteful Squad out post-combat, or if I want to just use this Expel to get rid of their Overgrown Arch, as they're undoubtedly going to tap it to gain life, and then I could respond with Expel to get rid of that. In fact, they go for the tap right now. Not that it matters too much, but I think I will just go ahead and use the Expel to get rid of that. It's just, at this point I'm so far ahead, I don't need as many removal spells as I have, and it's just going to make it so that I have, putting these counters on Leech Fanatic means I have one more lethal creature in that Leech Fanatic. And they don't have the blocker. They can't go fetch a lesson now. Okay, so they come up with a 3/3 flyer and a 1/1 Death Touch. So they did pretty well, because the Death Touch could potentially trade with my Leech Fanatic, and the 3/3 could hold back my team of 2/1s maybe. But I think I'm just going to use this Rise of Extus here. If I get rid of their Death Toucher, then their other creature's just going to have to chump my 5/5. And then they'll take 2 more, going down to 2. And here, I don't think it matters too much what I fetch. I'll probably just fetch another removal spell. But yeah, we'll get in there and they'll be forced to chump block. Or they could just take it and concede defeat. Okay, so we pick up another victory. We're up to 3-0. And we'll see you back for round 4. Okay, we're back for round 4. We're sitting on 3-0. Looking at this opening hand, There's definitely things that could go wrong with it, but I have 2 lands and a 2-drop, and I'm on the draw, and I have some very powerful cards. And I could potentially use this closing statement on 3 mana if I draw a white source. So I think being on the draw, it's worthwhile to go ahead and keep this. And we draw a white source right away, so that's going to help out quite a bit. Okay, so they make a Witherbloom Apprentice. This is a really strong Witherbloom card. I really like having these in my Witherbloom decks. We draw 3 drops, so that's going to make our hand even more functional. That's nice. We'll go ahead and get an attack in here off of the trade. Hopefully gain some life. And then we'll run out the Dusk Mage. Okay, so they go for a flunk here on my Leash Fanatic. The flunk's a pretty decent removal spell, so having them use it on my 2-drop, that's not bad a result for me. And I draw another land, so I'm pretty happy with this. Now I don't have an attack. I could decide whether I want to use this closing statement in the end step here, but I think I'll just wait, and they'll probably attack, and I'll use my Expel instead. I think Expel's much more situational, so it does exile though, and that has some relevancy. Oh, this is not gonna work out for them. So they stole my creature with the plan of sacrificing it to put a +1/+1 counter on their creature. A nice little combo for them, but that can only be activated as a sorcery. So the fact that they you know, go to combat and attack with them both means that I get to remove their creature in combat, and they aren't able to sacrifice my creature. So they just use that card from hand to do a couple of damage, I guess 4 damage, but it's really not a good use of card for them. So they're down to 1 card in hand. I think I'm just going to go ahead and play my Shadrick Silverquill, as they are down to 1 card in hand. I wouldn't fault anyone if you wanted to slow roll it a bit and do your Pillar Drop Rescuer instead. So I think the best here is just going to give them a +1/+1 counter and me a 2/1. I could also see losing a life and drawing a card, but I think I'd rather just develop the board here. While they only have 1 creature in play, it's really nice to be able to give them the +1/+1 counter. Here, the fact that it's asking me if I'm sure just makes me want to double check and make sure that I do have to target 2 separate players for the abilities. So I get a 2/1 and they get a +1/+1 counter. It's a pretty good trade for me. And yeah, now we have a lot of removal in hand. I'm just going to keep limiting their creatures so that I can keep giving them +1/+1 counters and give me 2/1s. And they give us the good game. We'll see if they want to concede or not. But yeah, I'll go for another 2/1 and okay, they do concede. We'll give them a good game. Okay, so we managed to get to 4-0. And we'll be back for round 5 as we'll be shooting to make it into Profit Town. See you then. Okay, we're back for round 5. We're sitting on 4-0, and we're going for win number 5. Looking at our opening hand. It looks just fine. It'd be nice to have something to do on turn 2 or turn 3. I don't exactly want Expel to be the first play I make. But both colors of mana, 3 lands, 4 spells. And we have one of our most powerful cards, as well as 2 quality removal spells and a nice pseudo card advantage 4-drop. So we'll see how this develops. Hopefully we can get a creature to put on the board. Needlethorn Drake, at least that's not going to be attacking for very much damage, so it's better than them playing a 2-drop that has more power and starts applying more pressure. We have a slow hand, so the less pressure they apply, the better. Now that, on the other hand, that's going to do a pretty decent job, and just like the other match where we played against Quandrix, this Biomathematician's pretty annoying. Its ability to put multiple bodies out there. I have lots of ways to trade with one body advantageously, but when their one body already came with its own bonus. Makes it much more difficult. So here I'm trying to figure out, like, do I just take 4 damage or do I go ahead and use my mana? Because I have stuff to do with my mana the next 3 turns. And so I don't necessarily want to just let this go and not use my mana this turn. And while it's not great using an expel on that Needlethorn Drake, the Drake can be a little bit obnoxious, and I think it's better to use it there than just on a 2/2. The damage isn't too bad so far, so I don't have to worry about that in terms of the race. I was thinking more long-term which one of those creatures is going to be more obnoxious. And like I said, I just had stuff to do with my mana the next few turns, so felt like it was worthwhile to go ahead and use the expel. Here I'm going to play the Shadwick Silverquill. I'm just trying to figure out whether or not I want to choose any of these modes. And I can't actually think that any of them are going to be advantageous, any combination of them. I think it's worse to give them any of those abilities. It's worse for me. Any one of those is better for them than any one of them is for me at this point. But, okay, so they go for a Leyline Invocation. I think I'm going to have to go ahead and deal with that right away with this Rise of Exodus. But that's pretty nice that they're basically, you know, we're trading 6 mana spells, but mine's going to come with the ability to fetch another spell, so that works out pretty well. And as far as options here, I've got several options. I think it's between Inkling Summoning, Expanded Anatomy, and Pest Summoning. The Expanded Anatomy could go really well on my Double Strike Flyer. I don't know that I'm ready to start attacking with it, though. It might be better to get some creatures, because then maybe at some point I could start using the Give My Team +1/+1 ability, +1/+1 counters, once we get to a board state where I have enough creatures on the battlefield to make it worthwhile. Again, trying to figure out if there's any combination of triggers here that would net me an advantage. But I don't really want to give them a 2/1 flyer at the in order to get either of the 2 abilities. I definitely don't want to let them draw a card in order to get one of the 2 abilities. And the +1/+1 counters for me, giving them +1/+1 counters is also pretty bad here. It's possible I could have given them +1/+1 counters and me a 2/1 flyer or something like that. But I think this is going to work out better. So now I have a decision. They have this Dragon Guard Elite. It is something that I could have to deal with eventually, but I do have the Spiteful Squad, so it's not necessary. But that thing can grow and get out of hand, so if they did deal with my Spiteful Squad, it could cause some problems. So I have to decide between removing it right away with Rise of Exodus or just developing my board. And I think maybe it might be worth it to start developing my board now, so that I can get closer to when I'm going to actually want to use some of these triggered abilities. And I'm going to go ahead and make an attack here just because I will have the 2/1 flyer in order to hold back the Trickster. And I can gum up the ground pretty nicely. My Spiteful Squad holds back the Dragon Guard Elite. But we're getting closer to where we're going to want to use this +1/+1 counters ability. Maybe if we could remove one of their creatures. Okay, so they go ahead and take down my flyer so they can get in for 2. Okay. Alright, Hunt for Specimen. This is nice because it's just another learn spell. I can use it to go fetch another spell. Or maybe the Expanded Anatomy. They don't have a flyer right now. I could throw Expanded Anatomy onto my Double Striker and start causing some problems for them. I definitely want to get a 3-mana spell that I can play without black mana. So that's either the expanded, I mean, any of the 3 to the left there. I don't really want the reduced to memory, even though it would be a nice way to just answer their Dragon Guard Elite. The fact that they get a 3/2 back, I think this expanded anatomy is going to play out better. And now I'm in the situation where I do have enough of a board that maybe I'll want to start putting +1/+1 counters on it. And I'll just give them 2/1 flyers as sure, my double striker could present a really quick clock, but and the 2/1 would give them a chump blocker. But I think it's worth it to give them that in order to start building up the rest of my team. If they have to just chump block it with it each turn, then it's as if I'm just putting +1/+1 counter on my whole team each time. So we'll go ahead and make this attack, and we'll see if they want to chump the double striker or not. If they just take it, it could put them in a pretty dangerous situation. For instance, if they took it and then only left 1 flyer back, this last removal spell could allow me to attack for lethal. So yeah, they do chump, and I think that's a pretty good situation for me to have them chumping with the ability that I give them, and then netting something that's really gaining advantage on my board here. Okay, and they have a resculpt for my Shadrick Silverquill. This resculpt is not a card that I would recommend playing. It's, I guess, the idea is that they would use it on their own fractal 1/1 most of the time to get a 4/4, but even that, or just in response to removal to get a 4/4, but it's pretty situational at best. So I don't. And then also the fact that the resculpt is instant. Maybe they should have waited till my turn to do it, because now I get to attack with my 4/4 that they gave me. So I go ahead and use the removal on Dragon Guard Elite and decide that I can start getting pretty aggressive here. This is part of the reason that I chose to go ahead and grow my team at the cost of giving them a chump blocker for my double striker. This is a lasting benefit on my board state here in the situation in which they do answer my best threat. The rest of my team now is still matches up well against theirs. So I get a good attack in there, and they give me the good game. Yeah. Okay, so they give it, and we move up to 5-0. So we made it into profit down. It always feels good. And we'll see if we can keep it going next round. Okay, we're through 5 rounds, and we're 5-0. We're going for win number 6 here. And we're going to play against a numbered gamer again. Looking at our opening hand, we only have 2 lands and we're on the play, so that's a little bit tricky. But we have 2 2-drops, and then we have 2 3-drops if we hit a 3rd land, which we do. So this should play out pretty decently. And the hunt for specimen can go get another 3-drop if we want to do something else with 3 mana as opposed to expel. And we have one of our strongest cards as well in the Shadrick Silverquill. So it's a fine start. I don't mind offering the trade here for the Needlethorn Drake. The Needlethorn Drake is always going to be able to do pretty decently at some point, trading up for a creature. So here I have a choice between Inkling Summoning and Pest Summoning, I think are the 2 considerations. In general, I lean towards getting this flyer. If I can manage to get that 1/1 Drake out of the way, the flyer is going to be pretty nice to have. The argument for the Pest Summoning would be that it allows my board to go wider so that this Shadrick Silverquill could start giving my team +1/+1 counters to good benefit. Okay, so they're ramping up, and they fetch a Fractal Summoning. I get to get in here with both, and now I think I'll just use my mana the most efficiently here, playing the Spiteful Squad as opposed to the Inkling Summoning. Manifestation Sage. This is a pretty good one for them to play here. They get a 6/6 along with a 2/2. So now I have a decision to make whether or not I just run this Silverquill out there. I'm a little bit wary to do so, as right now they have a 6/6 out there, and if they have something like a Mage Duel or some other fight spell, they're going to be able to remove my Silverquill, and that could leave me in a pretty tricky situation. If, however, I wait on it a little bit, there is some chance that I could be able to handle this 6/6 either with the Spiteful Squad or the Expel. I'm not thinking it's too likely that they'll attack into my Spiteful Squad and just let me trade them off, but there is a lot of stuff in blue that can just tap my creatures, or if they had like Arcane Subtraction, maybe they would attack in that situation. So there are some situations where they might be able to attack, and then if I could expel that 6/6, I'd feel a little bit safer running my Silverquill out there. Okay, so and here they go. They have a Frost Trickster, so they do go for tapping down my squad and getting in with the 6/6. So this is going to play out pretty decently for us, kind of how we planned it. It does hurt that we sort of have to use our mana inefficiently several turns in a row, but I think it was worthwhile to try and get a situation where they can't kill my Silverquill with a fight spell. And here, having drawn the next land, there is a chance that maybe I'll be able to go ahead and use all my mana after all if I find a use for this second Expel. We'll see if that comes up. Right now, they don't really have any creatures that I'm too eager to use the Expel on. The runner could get annoying pretty quickly, as they're close to making it a 3/3 unblockable. So I guess that could conceivably warrant a removal spell. Okay, Emergent Sequence, that'll come in as a 2/2. It looks like they don't have a splash color or anything, so they're just Quandrix. And it did grow their runner up to the 3/3 unblockable. And they're going to make an attack with the Trickster here as well. I guess they're just fine trading it off, or they have a combat trick. Either way, I think I'm fine getting the trade as well. So we'll go ahead and use the Expel here. And now I'm feeling there's only one unknown card in their hand. I think it's probably all right for me to get this Shadrix Silverquill out there. And so now I have to start deciding, am I going to want to use any of the triggers? And right now, honestly, I could see any combination of things being all right. I could give them a 2/1 while giving me +1/+1 on all my creatures. I could also give them +1/+1 on their creatures and give me a 2/1. I could give them +1/+1 counters and have me draw. I think in this situation, basically any combination of them favors me almost. So I decided to go ahead and give them the 2/1 and grow my team. I feel like it's the easiest way to net advantage here. It could be that giving them +1/+1 counters and me drawing cards and or getting a 2/1 flyer could be the better way to go. So now I have to decide, do I want to attack with anything? I could attack with the Leech Fanatic and just offer the trade with the Drake. I could attack with the Pest as well, just offering it up. I could attack with the squad and planning to put its counter somewhere if they trade it with the Drake. I decided that I'm not going to make any attacks just because I think my situation's going to get better in the future just putting more +1/+1 counters on my creatures before I let them trade off. But maybe I should have just gone ahead and made some attacks, try and get this Drake out of the way. I could see attacking with the Leech Fanatic there. I kind of don't want to get the Spiteful Squad traded off. I might need it to trade with a bigger creature of theirs. Okay, so they have a Lanelean Invocation to get an 8/8, and a Scourge Colony as a 4/4 reach. A decent turn for them. And now we see the slight how the Silverquill Silencer has a little bit of a boost in this set, as my opponent does have some revealed information over there. They fetched a lesson, and now I can name that lesson with my Silverquill Silencer, which is going to work out pretty well for us. Now if they ever want to play that, we get to draw a card. Again, I have to decide if there's a combination of things I want to do here to net an advantage. And I think it's worthwhile to keep giving them 2/1 flyers and me +1/+1 counters. It could be wrong. Maybe I'm not supposed to do anything with it this turn. But I think it's a pretty good trade for me to give them 2/1 flyers and me +1/+1 counters. I do want to get the +1/+1 counters to get my Shadrick Silverquill up to a 4 power. It's going to enable me to attack with it a lot more effectively. If it can take down that gnarly colony with first strike. Also, the more +1/+1 counters I get on the Spiteful squad, the better it's going to be for me in the long run. I do also have this closing statement as a nice little safety net, and I could consider using it on my end step, as I don't have the mana up for it right now, and they have that 8/8 out there, and one of the things I'm worried about is them using a fight spell to remove my Shadrick Silverquill. So I could use it in the end step here, knowing that I won't be able to use it on their turn. But I don't think it's worth it. They're just drawing random cards, and the 8/8 isn't a threat with my Spiteful squad out there, so I think it's okay for me to just hold on to it for a rainy day. And yeah, they are forced to just chump my flyer. I mean, they're not forced to, but they decide to. Another reason to get this Shadrick Silverquill up to 4 power is that it does represent a 2-turn clock in the air if it goes unblocked. So it means that they're going to have to chump it sooner. As you saw, they did go ahead and chump it right there. So now they're debating whether or not to play this Fractal Summoning at the cost of giving me a card. Alternatively, they could just leave their mana up and use it to scry, so their mana wouldn't be completely wasted. Right now, they'd be making a 6/6 with it. They decide it's not worth it to get the 6/6 and give me a card. Now with the Shadrick Silverquill up to 4 power, representing a 2-turn clock in the air, I think it's probably best for me to stop giving them chump blockers and just see if I can get them dead as quickly as possible. Just attacking with this double striker. It is possible that I could even conceivably be giving them +1/+1 counters in order to give myself something, like drawing cards. I think drawing cards would probably be better than the 2/1 flyer at this point, but as a lot of the sizes of their creatures aren't too important right now, so that would be a possibility, and maybe it was a better option. It's definitely tricky playing with this Shadrick's Silverquill and making decisions every combat about what combination is gonna benefit you best. In general, the best situation would be is if your opponent has very few or no creatures on board, and you could just give them +1/+1 counters that are not very beneficial for them at all, and then net your own benefit. Okay, so they look like they're gonna make an attack here with a Scourge Colony. I think that's a pretty interesting attack. And their Needlethorn Drake, both. Okay, so to me, this really says that I think what it means is that they have some sort of bounce and or removal in hand, and they want to trade off my Spiteful Squad first before they use that bounce. But I think I'm okay with it anyways. I think it's worth it to trade off the colony, because the colony is another blocker in the air, and the fewer blockers they have in the air, the quicker this game's going to go. And I imagine that they're going to be forced to use their bounce spell on my Shadrick Silverquill, so I'll just take these counters and put them over on the Leech Fanatic instead. That way I'm going to, with this closing statement in hand, if I want to kill their 8/8, I'm going to have multiple good attackers for them that they'll have to deal with. So they probably have Burying Books or Divide by Zero or something like that in order to bounce. That's what that attack means to me, is that they really wanted to trade off my Spiteful Squad before using their trick. But I think this is going to play out all right. And I will go ahead and use the closing statement here. End step, I'm going to grow my Pest up so that I could attack with it as well, knowing that now they can't just double block it and trade one of their creatures with it. They'd have to trade both of their creatures with it. And I'll play out this Leech Fanatic too. If they let me go to combat, maybe I'll choose a mode to put +1/+1 counters on my creatures. Or maybe even better, maybe I should just be drawing cards. With my expectation being that they're going to bounce my Shadrick Silverquill, maybe my Clock in the Air isn't as relevant, and I could give them a 2/1 flyer here in order to draw a card. Maybe I could have given them +1/+1 counters, but then they're back to the situation where they could double block my Pest. I think I'm going to leave the Silverquill Silencer back, even though they'd have to double block it in order to get it out of there. I think it's worth keeping their Fractal Summoning in hand, or making them give me an extra card in order to cast it. So I'll just attack with these creatures here. And yeah, they did have the Burying Books, and they do use it on the Shadrick Silverquill. So it's a little bit strange that they decided to wait until after I got the trigger from it. I was able to draw an extra card at the cost of giving them a 2/1 flyer. They go ahead and double block the Pest. This is an excellent trade for me, as any minimizing of their creatures is going to play out pretty well for me in the future. Maybe I could afford to give them +1/+1 counters with my Shadrick Silverquill. I guess they wanted to scry with their land, and that's why they waited until combat so that their Burying Books was cheaper. Okay, and they decided to finally bite the bullet and play this Fractal Summoning out, which gives me an extra card, and what a card it is. Blot Out the Sky. I have to imagine that this is going to close the game very quickly in my favor, as I'm just going to be able to make a ton of 2/1 flyers. And I actually make a mistake here, as I misread the Blot Out the Sky originally. I didn't realize that it would only destroy all non-creature and non-land permanents, and so I only did it for 5 here instead of 6, thinking that 6 would wrath the board. So I just make 5 2/1 flyers here instead, but that's definitely a mistake. I should be making 6. I don't think that it's very likely to matter, as this seems like a pretty difficult situation for them to get out of. And they agree with me, so they give it in. So there we go. We improved to 6-0. And our powerful 6 Silverquill deck is going to be going for the trophy next round. Okay, it's round 7, and we're going for the coveted 7-0 sweep. Going for the trophy. Looking at our opening hand, it looks perfectly fine. We have 2 2-drops, 4 lands, both colors, and a quality 6-mana removal spell. This should be able to serve us pretty decently. We pick up another 2-drop. I think I'm going to lead here with the Leech Fanatic. I think it's worthwhile to just hold off on the Silverquill Silencer for a bit, as if they ever cast the Learn spell, then we'll be able to just name the lesson they fetch. So if we delay that, that's going to work out. Unfortunately, they play a 2/2 first striker here, which can hold back our Leech Fanatic. Another advantage leading with Leech Fanatic was that we're going to hopefully gain some life early on, but they sort of prevented that. I could have potentially tried to run the bluff of attacking my Leech Fanatic into their Pledge Mage before casting a spell. But there's not a whole lot of combat tricks that get played these days. So I didn't feel like risking that. And they play this Maelstrom Muse. It's a pretty powerful card in these Izzet decks, as the Izzet decks frequently have some powerful, expensive spells that they want to use. And so this Muse plays pretty well for them. I draw a Spiteful Squad, and I'll just go ahead and lay that using all my mana. Here they make an attack. To me, it feels fairly likely that they have a combat trick, and that I can't just go for a double block on their Pledge Mage, as I would get completely wrecked by something like Enthusiastic Study if I tried to combo block their Pledge Mage. So I think I had to let it go there, but maybe it means that we have some information about their hand. They could have something like an Arcane Subtraction, they could have Enthusiastic Study, they could have Infuriate. I think those would be the most likely options for them. So now I'm thinking about what to name here with the Silverquill Silencer, and I think what I'm gonna go for is the Arcane Subtraction, as that's just gonna be really, it's a very commonly played card in these type of decks, and it's gonna be pretty effective against my Spiteful Squad. So I think that's gonna be the name for me. I could also conceivably name Enthusiastic Study instead, as I thought that was a slightly more likely card for them to have with their attack last turn. But in general, I think the Arcane Subtraction is a good one to name here. Okay, and they just get in the air. I guess they didn't want to attack with the Pledge Mage this time. Okay, I draw another land, unfortunately, but we'll go ahead and use our removal spell here on one of their flyers. Yeah, they're getting pretty aggressive here. My life total's getting pressured, and so I think it's worthwhile dealing with that one, and then also getting maybe an answer for their second flyer in the form of this Inkling Summoning. Maybe I could get the board stabilized here. Okay, they have an Igneous Inspiration for my Silencer. I don't know if that means they have an Arcane Subtraction in hand or not, but it's probably just the target they want to hit anyways. There's not a better target out there. And they get to go fetch an Elemental Summoning. This Igneous Inspiration is a really strong card. And the attack that they're lining up, it's fairly interesting. And they decide to pull back the Pledge Mage. At this point, the tricks they could have are the Arcane Subtraction, the Infuriate. They could have that one that gives +2/+0 in first strike, as well as a treasure. I think if they had that one, they would have made more attacks. You see me going ahead and putting in some stops around here just so that maybe they're wary of me having a trick of my own, and it might make them a bit more tentative to get into combat. I really want to try and slow down this game, prolong the game as long as possible, and if I can convince them not to make an attack where they have to use a trick proactively for fear of me having a response, that's going to be beneficial to me. Unfortunately, it looks like they do have an attack here to make. And given this attack, I wonder if they actually have multiple combat tricks. As I'm going to just line up some blocks here such that if they only had one trick, at least I'd trade with something. If they have two tricks, well, I'm going to be in a pretty difficult situation, but I can't just keep taking damage. I don't have great blocks on the first striker, so I'll just line up some blocks on the flyer and the tome shredder. The question is, do I want to block the tome shredder with a spiteful squad, a leech fanatic, or multiple creatures? And I don't necessarily want to do multiple creatures in case they have enthusiastic study or something like that. And in case they have arcane subtraction, maybe I won't put the spiteful squad into combat right now. So that maybe the squad might be more useful at killing the pledge mage in the future if I needed to block there. So maybe I'll just block with the leech fanatic. Conversely, if I had blocked with the spiteful squad this turn, I could, when the squad dies, I could put the counters on a leech fanatic and at least gain some life back with an attack. So maybe that would have been a better course of action. Oh wow, and unfortunately, they didn't have multiple tricks, but they did have one trick that worked effectively for blowing me out completely in combat. So yeah, that lore hold command, that's a really powerful spell in a nice aggressive deck. So now I'm in quite a difficult situation. I draw a hunt for specimens, so that's going to allow me to go fetch another lesson. I'm in a pretty difficult situation here. I don't know exactly what I should be fetching. I could get pest summoning, but that's just going to be some chump blocks. I could get spirit summoning as maybe that could trade with the pledge mage or the tome shredder. Or maybe I just have to get I sort of have to hope they don't have anything, as if they have any sort of removal spell, I could die very easily here. And so maybe I have to hope they have nothing. And if I get this expanded anatomy, maybe it'll hold back all of their ground creatures. Maybe they won't find any effective attacks on the ground. And then if they're just attacking in the air, maybe I'll have enough time to find something to survive. So that's the game plan I'm going to go with. I'm not too hopeful that it'll work out, but okay, and they have a Pigment Storm here, which is going to deal damage to my head, which means they're going to have a lethal attack here. So we'll give them a good game. And yeah, they get an Alpha Strike. So we do drop a game. We don't manage the 7-0. That's too bad, but we've got a couple more chances to try and get this trophy. And we'll just go for it again next round. See you there. Okay, round 8, and we're going for the trophy, take 2. Looking at our opening hand, we got to be happy. We got a 2-drop, a quality removal spell, and our biggest bomb in the deck, Blot Out the Sky. And we have both colors mana, so really nothing to complain about here. We get to lead off with a Leech Fanatic. Looks like it's the Silverquill mirror match. The Fanatics, I find them to be particularly useful 2-drops in this deck, as the life gain can really help me get to my more powerful spells. So we'll go ahead and get this attack in. And they have an Umbral Juke to make us sacrifice our creature. I'm not too upset about that. Okay. Looks like they're just going to pass the turn again. Maybe they have some more removal spells. I'm really not too upset if they're just using removal spells on my Leech Fanatics. That's not going to bother me much at all. And I'll just go ahead and continue with another Leech Fanatic. Next turn, I'm going to have my choice of powerful spells to play, Blot Out the Sky or Shadrix. Okay, so here they go ahead and draw a couple cards with Crushing Disappointment. And then they have a Professor of Symbology. This Professor of Symbology is a pretty strong card. Pretty powerful. 2-drop 2/1 that goes and fetches another spell. It's really a strong card. And they leave their mana open, so this tells me that they definitely have another trick. They didn't cast their Spirit Summoning. Maybe they have another removal spell. It could be Expel. It could be another Umbral Juke. They could have a combat trick, though I wouldn't expect that to be quite as likely. Maybe they have a Lash of Malice, something like that. I'm going to go with the Shadrix Silverquill here. You could definitely have an argument to play Blot Out the Sky first and then use the Silverquill next turn to immediately give them all +1/+1 counters. But I think what I'm going to do here is get the Shadrix Silverquill out while they only have one creature in play, as giving them +1/+1 counters on their creatures is a pretty minimal effect right now. So I'll use it to give them a +1/+1 counter and me a 2/1 flyer. I feel like that's going to be a pretty nice trade for me. So yeah, I'll get the 2/1 flyer, give them the +1/+1 counter. And then I'll go ahead and make attacks with my Leech Fanatics. I'm fine trading either of these, either with the Professor of Symbology, so that I can keep giving their creatures +1/+1 counters if we trade off. Or trading it with a trick of some sort, a removal spell. I'm not too concerned. Okay, so they have another Umbral Juke. I have a decision to make between sacrificing a Leech Fanatic or the Inkling Summoning token. And I think I'll just get rid of the token and get damage in this turn. That could be wrong. It could be more relevant for me to just keep the flyer and sacrifice the Fanatic. Hopefully it shouldn't make too much of a difference. I still have this Blot Out the Sky. That's going to be pretty powerful. Okay, so again, they leave up 3 mana while they have 4 cards in hand and just manage a Spirit Summoning. This turn, I think it's definitely worthwhile to put a whole bunch of creatures on the board and then use the Silverquill to give him +1/+1 counters. It's just a question of whether or not I go for the Blot Out the Sky right now or do the hunt for specimens, and maybe maybe I fetch Pest Summoning to go wide in conjunction with this +1/+1 counters. It's entirely possible that I should just be pulling the trigger on this Blot Out the Sky and close out this game as quickly as possible. One card to think about in these Silverquill decks is Humiliate. So there is some argument for me just using this Blot Out the Sky as early as possible, get my 3 2/1 flyers. And now, as far as getting my attacks on, again, I'm going to attack with the Leech Fanatic, but if what they left up mana for is Expel, I really don't want to let them use it on this Shadrix Silverquill. I think this is a game that I could win playing around that trick. So if they do have Expel, I think I'm just going to leave my Shadrix Silverquill back and just keep getting advantage out of my Shadrix Silverquill as opposed to risking it. Okay, so now they go for a Spiteful Squad, and again they leave up 3 mana. It's possible that we sort of sniffed out what they're doing here, as even after playing the Spiteful Squad, they had stops. So they do have something they can cast, and they're leaving up mana anyways. And they left up mana last turn and didn't cast anything, so it's possible that maybe Expel is what they have, and they're just hoping to be able to catch this Shadrix Silverquill. So now I have a choice again between just going with the Blot Out the Sky or the Spiteful Squad. And again, I decide to wait and just see if I draw another land so that I can make more creatures. But maybe that's excessively greedy, and I should just make use of this blot out the sky. Because in these colors, anything that deals with multiple of my flyers is gonna deal with all of them. They could have a wrath of some sort, like the 8 mana black deadly vanity or something like that. But I just go ahead and make the Spiteful Squad and give my team +1/+1 counters again. And they trade off their Spiteful Squad with one of my pest tokens to grow another one. And then they have a guiding voice to grow one of their flyers and go fetch another thing. They fetch an expanded anatomy and they don't cast it. Again, they leave up mana. So yeah, it's possible that they do have some removal spell, some trick that we haven't been letting them use. At this point, I draw another land. I think it's worthwhile now to just get my 4 flyers, and I'll go ahead and throw +1/+1 counters on them. I think that's going to make it very difficult for them if I just have a bunch of big flyers. Giving them a bunch of 2/1 flyers is, you know, it's a little bit counterproductive, but they're gonna have to block with some of them this turn anyways. And I could go ahead and attack with the Spiteful Squad. I just didn't want to give them the opportunity to trade it off with their 4/3. Even though it would mean that they'd have to double block one of these other pests. Yeah, they give it in, and so we managed to get to the trophy. We go 7-1, and we get there. Okay, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you appreciated the video. If you want to catch more of these videos as they come out, go ahead and click the subscribe button below, and I'll see you next time.